Good morning.
Morning.
How is everybody today?
Good morning.
Make co-host Sue. There you go.
Hey, Wanda, Tom,
Good
Morning.
John,
morning, Sue.
Wendell. Good to see your faces.
It's good to see yours.
Reggie Rich.
The man with the plan.
Mhm. Great. That was a great teaching, Reggie.
It sure
I
was.
loved it. One of my favorites.
Wendy, how's
So,
your son? I'm sorry.
oh, Alex is doing good. He's got a little color in his eye now, like all around it. And but the swelling's gone down. He's all good. Not loopy
Mm.
anymore.
That was scary.
Yeah, Alex, my poor dear son, he like forgets that he has a head. Even when he was a little kid, like we're coming out of Disneyland or Disney World, whichever one's in Orlando. And my other two kids get through the turnstile just fine. Alex just knocks his head right into it. He hits his head everywhere he goes. And he's laying underneath this truck trying to fix an exhaust system at a gas station when he could have just come home and gotten the right tools. It was driving him crazy, so he had to take care of it right then. And he used a tool that just didn't fit. And he's pulling on it, knocks right into his head. He said he's laying under the truck, and it was the warm blood that woke him up.
Oh,
And what was so crazy is that my other son, who lives 20 minutes from us, happened to be pulling into the same gas station when it happened.
Just by coincidence, I'm sure.
Yeah, yes, that's called God incidents.
That's exactly right.
And he took him and cleaned him up and took him into the bathroom, got him all cleaned up in the blood. And Alex can gut a deer. He can gut anything, no problem. But he can't see his own blood. He gets all queasy and stuff when he sees his own blood. And so my son Ian says, "Man, let me just go get you a drink. I'll go get you a ginger ale." And Alex said, "Oh yeah, that'd be nice." He said, "Can I use your debit card?" So he's telling me the story that his brother used his card to get him a drink. And I'm sure he came back with his own Coke and pack of nabs. Anyway,
Those are called memories to tell your grandchildren one
I'm
day.
telling you, what was really funny is sitting in the emergency room. Everybody's cordoned off with these curtains. Um, and people are just having full-blown conversations like there's walls in between everybody. Just listen to the stuff they're saying. It's just it's just comical. It's absolutely comical. And I'll tell you what was really cool though. The intake nurse that took us in, um, you could tell she was flustered. She's asking him questions and she was just really, and it was, 8:15 in the morning. At the emergency room. And I said, well, you must have already had a really busy day. And she said, well, we've already had two people code here today. And, I'm
Just what you want to hear.
and I'm thinking, man, how do you do that every day?
Mm.
And so Alex says, is it okay if we pray for you right now?
Oh.
Oh, wow.
Here he is with an ice pack, blood dripping down his face. Can
Mm.
I pray for you right now? And that's what he did. He got up and we laid our hands on her and he prayed for her. I prayed for her, prayed for the families, and it was
Wow.
I just, he's an amazing kid.
He is. He's authentic
He really
and
is.
he's funny. He's hilarious.
He is. He is. I'm so
Wow.
blessed, and
Yes.
it's just amazing. He keeps me on my toes for sure.
Hmm.
He makes me want to be a better person.
Hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Really pretty cool.
Hmm.
All right, so we are there, y'all. Welcome to Sonrisers. I am so glad you all are here. If you were here last week, We, of course, did the event live from it's called the DME, Diversified Mortgage Expo. And it's a note expo. There are probably about 150 people, 180 with the vendors and everybody together. But it was a great little event. We for the size that it was, there were a lot of good contacts there. Like, um, I was really impressed at how friendly everybody was and just willing to share everything. It was really, really neat. You know, no one was looking at each other's competition. So that was really, really cool. But I was so thrilled to run into my friend Randy Harris, who, you know, talked about his notes and things that he's been doing. And I always love sitting down and talking with him and just hearing his stories, and how creative his mind is. So he's going to be speaking with us this morning, and I'm really, really excited to have him back to give us some more detail. But Tom, are you ready to get us started, my friend?
Well, I am. Good morning, guys.
And if everyone would mute, that would really help. Thank you. Sorry.
I guess midweek I was starting to look at some thoughts for today, and then it hit me that this coming Sunday is Mother's Day, and I said, no way in the world we can, not say something, have something, and speak something, for Mother's Day. Just on a personal note, my mom went to be with the Lord in 2008 on Mother's Day. And I said, boy, God really has a sense of humor, because we got a call that morning and I didn't take the call, couldn't get the call. And when I called back, I was telling my wife, Dot, I said, Mom died. And she said, why did you say that? I said, well, we got a call from uh, the facility, and it was about 6:30 in the morning, and they're not calling me to say Happy Mother's Day. So finally, when I got in contact with someone and they had the authority to say something to me, or to really to pass that information on, um, they said Mom had passed. And at 8:30, Dot and I went to we were in worship service before we even went back to the facility. So I wanted to speak about Mother's Day. I had gotten uh, a text message from the local jewelry store about coming in, and I said, if you're going to go out this coming Sunday to uh, to a restaurant, if you have not made reservations yet, it must be a golden corral, because any place else that you're going to sit down at a table is probably already booked all for Mother's Day. And one year I found out, I said, well, we need to book something for Father's Day. And when I called the restaurant, they said, no, that's not a problem. You don't have to book. Make book something to come in. Just come in. Father's Day, they said we're almost empty. So there's a great difference between Mother's Day and Father's Day. So here's the origin of Mother's Day. It was Anne Reeves Jarvis who had organized Mother's Day work clubs. This was in 1850 in West Virginia, to improve health and sanitation and care for wounded soldiers during the Civil War. After her mother's death in 1905, Anna Jarvis wanted to honor her legacy and the sacrifices mothers made for their children. In 1908, Jarvis organized the first official Mother's Day celebration at a church in Grafton, West Virginia. Thanks to her campaign, President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed Mother's Day a national holiday in 1914, to be celebrated on the second Sunday in May. They said after that, Anna Jarvis later became disillusioned with the commercialization of the holiday and spent much of her later life trying to remove it from the calendar. So what she did for good, living in a capitalistic society, they saw the merits of really hitting this and making it one for restaurants and flowers and candies and jewelry and everything else. But in God's word, in Proverbs 31, the writer talks about, it doesn't talk about it talks about a wife and a mother. And I said, this is so apropos. It was written by, it said the saying of King Lemuel. And went back to try to do research, and no one really knew who he was. They thought it may have been a pseudonym for King Solomon. But if it was for King Solomon, then we know that his mother was Bathsheba. So I'm going to read this if you want to follow along with me. It's Proverbs 31st chapter, starting with verse 10. And here it is. It said, a wife of noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She is like the merchant ship, bringing her goods, her food from afar. She gets up while it's still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her task. She sees that her trading is profitable, and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hand, she holds this distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instructions is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. The writer said, many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise in the city. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. Godly mothers are not just caregivers. They are warriors in a quiet battle of everyday life. From sleepless nights to sacrificial love, mothers demonstrate strength that the world often overlooks, but yet heaven never forgets. Let us give thanks for the resilience of mothers, whether they are biological, adoptive, spiritual, or mentor mothers. Their strength builds homes and generations. In 2 Timothy 1:5, Paul writes, he said, I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice. Paul reminds Timothy that his strong faith began with the women in his family. The faith of a mother leaves a spiritual legacy that can echo through generations. Even small seeds of prayer, scriptures, and examples can bear eternal fruit. To the mothers, never underestimate the power of your influence, your prayers, your teaching, and your faithfulness are not in vain. Honor your father and your mother. This is the scripture that God has given us from Exodus 20:12. Honor your father and your mother. God commands us to honor our parents, not only when it's easy or convenient, but always. Honoring mothers is part of honoring God himself, because motherhood is a divine assignment. So let us not just say thank you, but how can we show our honor in action? Through our words, through our time, and through our gratitude. And for those whose mothers have passed on, we honor their memory by living the values they instilled in us. To every mother, your labor is not forgotten. Your sacrifices are seen. Your love is a reflection of God's love. To those who find Mother's Day difficult, whether due to loss, longing, or broken relationships, God sees you too. He is close to the brokenhearted and provides comfort and healing. I was listening to a sermon on YouTube, and this preacher was saying that being single is not a disease, and being married is not a cure. So I think that's something that's profound for us, for our children, as if they are in the adult status and they are not married, that we can offer some wisdom. And again, being single is not a disease, and being married is not a cure. Let's pray, have a prayer for our mothers. Holy and righteous God, Father, there was a statement, or poem, that he who rocks the cradle rules the world, and how important motherhood is. And Father, how protective mothers are, how they will fight with their last breath, how they will do everything they can to guard their children, to even sacrifice their life for the life of their child or their children. How, Father, that they have this eternal bond with their child and children, and how they nurture them, and how they have compassion and love, and how they mentor and teach. And Father, I know every woman who has mothered a child does not fit that category. And I know that everyone who could read Proverbs 31 may not meet those standards. But yet, Father, the only way that we have been able to have life is through our mother. And so, Father, we just want to lift up the celebration, the recognition of this day, of Mother's Day, as it comes this week. And Father, just be thankful that you have allowed that person to birth us, to give us life, for us to have the independence and the opportunity also. And so, Father, I pray that for those of us whose moms are still alive, that we have a chance to stop and reflect and to give back and to recognize them for our origin in this world, for the door that God allowed them to use to open the world for us to be able to arrive. And so, Father, we just want to praise and just be special and give special recognition to the moms that we have that are still alive. And so, Father, we praise you because it was your grace who put these women into our lives. And so, Father, give us that same grace and opportunity that we recognize that you are God and that you provided your son Jesus to provide for us, to lift us up, and to save us from our very sins. So we praise you this morning, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. You know, I love the way you opened up talking about, how Golden Corrals are all packed on Mother's Day, and on Father's Day they're all wide open. They're all on the golf course, but it's so easy for us to compare God's love with our fathers. Kind of make those kind of connections. What I think is harder for us to do is compare our mother's love to how God loves us. And the
Amen.
Bible talks about the the God made women and men, all of us, in his image. And we don't think of that from a mothering point of view.
Yeah, Wendy, I was looking at Rahab, and I was going to do a lesson on her. And I said, if you're in Joshua and you're reading that story about her and how she was Rahab the harlot, but it goes on to show that even though that was the name that she has, and 6,000 years later, if someone said Rahab, someone will say, yeah, Rahab the harlot. But it shows, God's grace for her, that through her lineage, Jesus Christ the Savior, came about. So motherhood is a grace that God provides to us. And I think the story about Rahab is that when we come to God, whatever our history and traditions have been for moms or for dads or whatever we have done that may not be good and may not be something that we want to even talk about,
Mm.
that God's grace can take the negative and turn it into a positive. You know, history and everything else kind of writes to bad. It's kind of destructive because, when we read this morning, I'm sure all of us, many of us could say, well, mom is good, but my neighbor, my best friend's mom wasn't like that. She wasn't there, or she may have been, dependent on drugs or something else that may have occurred. But yet, even a person such as that, going through the door of Christianity and salvation, that God wipes that whole slate clean, and he shows us, in genealogy, how could Jesus Christ, the Son of God, originate through a line that included, Rahab, the harlot. But God shows grace. And when God provided mothers for us, he gave us and provided grace for us,
Mm.
even though no one I know of will ever meet what was written in Proverbs 31. But even through all of that, that person gave us life on this earth. And from that point, we are alive. We deal with the circumstances, the history, the past, and the future through that opportunity of that birth that God provided to us.
Interesting. Yeah, you think about the mothering side of God. I hate to use the word the feminine side of God, but I'm going to. Isaiah 66:13, as a mother comforts her child, so I will comfort you. Deuteronomy 32:11, as an eagle stirs up its nest and hovers over its young, spreading his wings and taking them up. Isaiah 49:15, can a woman forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion for the child she has borne? As surely as I will not forget the people I love.
Amen.
Luke 13:34. And Jesus said, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you kill the prophets and stone those sent to you. How often have I longed to gather your children as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you are unwilling. There are
Amen.
so many references that are used with God feeling motherly.
You know, it's strange that you mentioned that about what Jesus said, as a hen gathers its chicks. When I was doing this last night, getting this prepared, I had seen on YouTube that this mother hen had her, I guess, chickens or biddies, and a king cobra had come up, and how she had gathered her chicks basically under her, and here she was fighting a king cobra, and believe it or not, won. But she had no fear, and she protected every one of her children, of the chicks that were there. And I said, that instinct that God has put in us. I mean, we're not, like Pavlov the dog, that we are all instinctively doing something, but just to see in nature the love of a mother, for their offsprings, and how they risk their life, give their life to protect them. It's not one where she had gotten two or three and said, "I'm out of here. I've saved what we can, and the others, I'm sorry." She stayed there and she fought, you know, the serpent, to be able to have victory for her chickens. And I mean, that's something I think is instilled, in moms. And again, I think that was a very true statement. The person who rocks the cradle, rules the world. And the influence that moms can have, in the life of their children, and how they can kind of make a home, make a house a home. And I mean, all of us who are kind of older, moms were elevated. They may have been servants, they may have had menial jobs, they may have done all of that. But when it came to home and life, they were the voice, they were the voices that were there. I said, now in the days and age we have now, it's so many mothers that are working and doing all kinds of other things, or in business, maybe single, and so much that's going on. And so the table time, the home life, the environment in that house that's supposed to be a home does not elevate to where it used to be. And I would say that the trials and tribulations that we have in our country now is because the house has not become a home.
Mm,
And it's just a space and an address where people come in and go out. And the nurturing, the loving, the mentoring is lacking in many, many of these houses.
yeah. We laugh about how it's hard for us to stay in our lane at work. You want to get into somebody else's role and someone else's job. Well, I laugh about it. I don't know that people I work with laugh about it as much as I do, because I'm the one that moves over into lanes I shouldn't be moving over into. But that's where we mess up. We've really just walked away, and it happens so slowly, such baby steps that we move away from what our real roles are
Yeah.
as children of God and members of a family and roles in our family. And yes, things happen that kind of force you into certain situations. Everybody goes through that. But yeah, I think we've all dropped the ball on just following the direction that he's put in front of us to follow. We just don't seek his direction enough.
Well, that little saying about being single is not a disease and being married is not a cure. It's almost in the same process that when you meet young couples and someone says, does she do? And she says, I'm a housewife. And it's almost one that you're kind of taken back, well, you know, Sue doesn't work. She's a stay-at-home mom. And and then it's almost the same thing. We say it in a negative way. You say
Mm,
Sue doesn't work. She's a stay-at-home mom. As if what she's doing, the nurturing, the mentoring, the homeschooling,
mm,
all of those things that are there and the teaching, how to be a child, how to grow up, as if that's thrown away
mm,
because it's not a W-2 coming in and you're not dressing up with your briefcase or your cachet and you're going out doing things. We have tried almost in America have taken motherhood, staying at home, providing for your family as something that's not extraordinary. I mean, it's
right.
not something special. It's something that you think is, I don't know why they're doing that. They could have two incomes and they're only got one and her husband's he has to do all of these other things without her. But that's how that whole process started out with
Mm,
the
mm,
mom being the mother and being at home and being able to instill all of these things in the child. I said it in Proverbs 31. It never talks about what the father does. It says
right.
the father is uh, appreciated being, at the gates of the city. When he comes, everyone knows that who his wife is because
Mm,
how he's dressed, because she's making his clothes, and the statue that she has, that she's buying, she's going out and she's doing business things, even though she's at home
mm,
and she's not on the Hallmark channel at 11 o'clock. She's still working. She's still mending. She's still doing these other things. And I think that's a great process for us. And I'm not trying to turn back the hands of time for maybe new moms or anyone else that's on here. But the value is that you have a chance to impact the future
mm,
by the child that you are raising and that the virtue that you can instill in your children will be pluses, for another century to go. Because in a way, we all live, even when we die, because we live in those that we have mentored and nurtured that goes on it could go on until Jesus return. I don't know, but it's just the things we do doesn't die. The good we do, and unfortunately the bad we do, does not die when we leave this earth.
mm. I don't know the age range of people that are listening this morning. Right now, we've got about 80, 90 of you that are listening on this and Facebook. But Tom isn't just blowing smoke like an old man talking about old times. There is nothing more important than truly a stay-at-home mom.
Amen.
There's nothing more important than a mom's ability to raise their family and be that support person, that true integrator
Amen.
for the family. There's nothing more important. And I can tell you, when I was going through that myself at that age, I just had something inside of me that was Yes, I want to stay home. I want to take care of my kids, but boy, I also want to prove what I can do. So who was that really about?
Mhm. Again, we live in a society, we live in a capitalistic society, Wendy, and we know that people lose their life trying to cross over the border to get here because this is a country where you can go from rags to riches. And
Mm,
it's a very, very tempting and attractive, process to have is, if I work, we can, instead of having a house this size, we can do this. If I work, instead of having beans and vegetables, we can have steaks and all of those other things. So there's a lot of temptation, on a family to
mm,
be able to do that. But at the end, who makes it, who's being sacrificed? It's the children, that's being sacrificed.
mm.
And again, the home, the house that many of our fellow citizens buy, that's all it ever turns out to be that whole time is a house. And it has never been converted into a home.
That's well said. Well said. Thank you, Tom. That was
Thank
awesome.
you.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, Brian.
Good morning.
Shall we play the game Where's Brian this morning?
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm right
you're
on.
home.
For you, I might be right there, or maybe I'm down there.
I didn't know
So,
if you were out of town because you're the traveling kind of guy.
I actually am out of town. I'm headed up to our family cottage that's been in the family since the 60s. It's one of the coolest places on earth. My dad grew up going there as a kid, and I grew up going there as a kid, and my kids get to go there as kids. Sad news, our Michigan trip this year falls the same week as our Chairman's Club trip. So we're skipping Michigan, which is weird.
Oh.
I know. So I'm staying maybe a tiny, tiny bit longer as I open the cottage up. Um, but Wendy, it was a busy week in the real estate world and the financial world. So we had a Fed meeting, and we had talked about this last week. We didn't think they would cut rates, and shocker, they did not cut rates. Really, the thing that is the surprise when we see these meetings is not what happens, it's what they say is coming. And that's where the marketplace holds its breath. What are they going to talk about in the meeting notes and when they do the questions? So Jerome Powell said that they need to wait 22 different times in the meeting. He said wait 22 times, which if you think about looking backwards for the last 2 or 3 years, we saw a lot of inflation and we saw mortgage rates get up into 8%. And a lot of that was because the Fed had decided to wait. The Bank of England cut their rates a quarter point, and we are waiting. So is it the right thing? Is it the wrong thing? I'm not here to tell you what's right and wrong because that's maybe beyond my paycheck, but no moves at this point. And when we look at the kind of the high level notes of the meeting, they talked about unemployment is remaining stabilized and low. So I told a number of people, if the Fed says that unemployment is good to go for now, that's not the biggest fear. We're likely to see mortgage rates react poorly to that. In the mortgage world, we want to see that the Fed's taking action, and the Fed has to decide, is unemployment the bigger risk or is inflation the bigger risk? So they did spend some time talking about inflation, which is remaining elevated. And that's why the Fed wants to wait, is they see that inflation right now may be the bigger risk factor that they need to be concerned with. So waiting. Don't know if that's the right move, but that is the move we're going to be in for a little bit. And I'll show you some charts on the Fed futures. But before we talk about the Fed futures, I want to talk about Bitcoin because that has been making some news recently as well. So let me see if I can share my screen here and give you some charts. All right. So Bitcoin is back up over $100,000. And we're all real estate investors. And if you take out the real estate, then we're just investors. And that's after we're believers, right, Wendy? But When we look at Bitcoin, it's something that we should pay attention to. 5 days, we're up 8.9%. Now, there are lots of 5-day marks where you're down 20%. So this is a good day to look at a chart and to see, man, was it wise to put money into Bitcoin? When we look at, oh, come on, chart, don't die on me now. Why would it do that? Well, we're going to skip that. I was going to show you that if you had invested in Bitcoin 5 years ago, which was right before COVID, which we did a meeting and spoke about Bitcoin, Bitcoin is up 980% in 5 years. So I don't know that the next 5 years will bring 900% growth in Bitcoin, but it's something to be watching and paying attention to. Arizona just came out with a Bitcoin and Digital Asset Act. So the state of Arizona is going to start putting a Bitcoin reserve fund in place. Trump just placed a pro-Bitcoin SEC leader in place. So when we look at what's coming with Trump's election, he wants America to be a Bitcoin and a crypto hub for the world. So we are now in a friendly Bitcoin era, and it's just something that you should be aware of and paying attention to. So let's talk now about the Fed meeting and what's coming. So in June, right now, there's a 20% chance that we see a rate cut. Right now, we're between 4.25 and 4.5% on the interest rate. So really, we're at 4.375. Why they can't say that, I don't know. It's so hard to just always say this range thing. But there's an 80% likelihood that we don't see rates change in the June meeting. That's June 18th. And then July, we are going to see a meeting, and there's a current estimate of about 60% that we're going to see a cut, 52% chance that it's a 0.25% cut, and an 11% chance that it is a 0.5 point cut. And then when we kind of fast forward, we continue to see the odds of a larger than a 0.25 point cut being in the marketplace. And if we go back to the end of the year, we're looking at a vast majority of people think that we're going to see interest rates being cut, with only a 1% chance that rates are still at the current ranges. So that is going to signal bond investors that the good times are coming and the government is stimulating, and we could see some relief on the mortgage rate side of the world. So again, the Federal Reserve, they just talked about the economy. It remains solid. It's uncertain. Inflation is still above the 2% target. Jerome Powell did mention that he is not making his decisions based on what Trump says, right? And they also mentioned that they're not going to preemptively cut based on any tariffs that might come. So the Fed just wants to take it easy and make sure that they're probably taking too long to make any decisions, because that's what they're really good at, is just waiting a little bit too long to do anything. And they're set in their ways. They are like, you cannot talk us into being aggressive in interest rate cuts. So we're going to look at some charts really, really fast. The 10-year Treasury, so you can Google this US 10Y and you can find this chart. And yesterday we had a bond auction. 2 days ago we had the Fed meeting, and we did not see much movement in the 10-year Treasury in the Fed meeting. On this chart, up means expensive interest rates. So this chart means mortgage rates are going up. Yesterday we have this really big green candlestick, and there was just a poor auction that happened yesterday, and the marketplace didn't like it. When we look over at the mortgage-backed securities, we had kind of traded last week. We were up over all of these resistance lines. These lines that squiggle across, these are the 25, 50, 100-day moving averages, and we were above them. And then we kind of dropped below them prior to the Fed meeting, which was sad news. And so we're being suppressed right now by all these levels of resistance. So we've got the 25-day moving average and the 200-day moving average and the 50-day, and then we have a Fibonacci level. So we've got some work for things to get better. If unemployment had come in weak with the jobs report that came out last Friday, and it came out very strong, it came out way stronger than everybody thought it would, especially when the day before the ADP report came out way weak. Again, this BLS report, it will get revised. It was super strong, and that was the highlight of the news story. What wasn't the highlight was that the prior 2 months numbers were both revised down. So we know these numbers are going to be fake. They're going to be revised down. It's really annoying. But mortgage rates are sitting at 6.91%. We're not seeing a lot of movement in the mortgage rates right now. Application volume did tick up. Now, they said surge. There was a surge of 10% or 11% new application volume. Well, that little stick right there barely moves the radar when you look historically at how much new mortgage applications we see. We are in this rut here since rates really started going up in 2022. We see the mortgage application volume just plummet. So even a big 10 or 11% move up is still not a lot of people applying for mortgages. When we look at house price predictions, this is looking at 5 major indices and where they think pricing is going to go. I actually saw I couldn't find a chart for it, but I saw that the new home sector, I think it was a growth of 11% is the prediction for sales this year, for new homes to be up 11% and existing home sales to be up 9%. And so when we look at new home prices, we're seeing a decline because builders are building smaller houses, which is making that number look smaller. And that's going to affect these indices on where do we think house prices are going this year, because new homes are a factor. And if people can go buy cheaper homes, then they may not buy more expensive existing homes. So there's not a huge prediction of great, fantastic appreciation, but this is still appreciation, and I'll take positive numbers all day long. Housing inventory levels, if we look at this chart, and we haven't looked at this chart in a few months or a few weeks at least, but April 2019 to April 2025, this is just showing green means very large increases in inventory as compared to 2019. Brown means still a lot less inventory. So this Northeast sector, man, they are still just holding strong, and there's nothing to buy out there. There are parts of the country where we're seeing brown, and then the number of green areas is really increasing. I want to say that this site, Resi Club, was tracking like 69 markets that had inventory levels that were much greater in the last 5 years than that was in 2019. So I'll let you look at that chart real quick and you can kind of see where you're at. The size of the bubble is the size of the metro market. Okay. The color of the bubble is the shift in inventory levels as compared to 5 years ago. And then the last thing we're going to look at, I saw this number and it was really funny. It said, the article said, FHA assumptions are up 127%, which sounds like awesome. Like, oh my God, FHA assumptions are just going through the roof. It's still only 5,000. There's not that many assumptions happening. You've got people who have 3% mortgage rates, but their house mortgage is going to require $100,000 or $150,000 or $200,000 down payment or a second mortgage. And when you get a second mortgage that's that large, your blended rate, it almost doesn't make sense to take that assumption over unless you just have a bunch of cash. You always work. I get this call maybe once a week. Hey, Bryan, I found a house. It's got an FHA or a VA mortgage, and I want to assume it. What are my steps? You don't call me. If you want to assume a mortgage, you call that client's mortgage servicer and you work through that servicer. And I've got a client right now that we just ordered an appraisal on a VA mortgage because he's been working with Mr. Cooper for 6 weeks and he sees like no gains or traction in the process. So it sounds sexy to take over a 3% mortgage, but in reality, it's really hard to do with some of the servicers. And this guy was having to bring $175,000 to closing in order to take over that mortgage. So it's just a question that I get so often, but you don't call a mortgage guy, you call the servicer when you want to assume a mortgage. If you can find a deal and you got the cash, go assume a mortgage. That is awesome. And you can, as an investor, you can assume an FHA or a VA mortgage. It is allowed, but there's not a lot of places that you can go get a second mortgage. And if you get a second mortgage and you're buying it as an investment property, that second mortgage might be in the 9s, 10s, or 11% range. So now we have to look at the blended rate and see, does it make any sense to try to do that assumption? It just depends on what the equity in that home is. So there's a little bit of news for you.
Can you assume a mortgage as an investor?
You can, yes. Yep, FHA and VA. So if a veteran assumes a VA mortgage, they actually transfer the entitlement. So veterans have an entitlement. They have an amount of money that they're allowed to borrow with VA up to 100% financing. And if an investor buys that house, it leaves that entitlement on that veteran's entitlement, right? So it ties up part of their entitlement. So they can still go buy a second home, but they
But
may
they're
not be able to
limited.
buy it at 100% because you're still tying up their entitlement. So a lot of investors or a lot of veterans, they don't want to do an assumption to an investor because it's not freeing up all of their ability to go get another house or two, because a veteran can have two houses. Well, if you're assuming one of their mortgages, they no longer can get two houses. They can only get one more house, but it's allowed. You just don't see a ton of veterans. Veterans would much prefer another veteran assume their mortgage because then that entitlement transfers over to that new veteran. But it is allowed for FHA and VA for you to assume those mortgages as an investor.
Huh. That's very interesting. I never really thought about that. What a great way to be
There's
buying
some
from
sites out there,
3%.
Wendy, and I don't have them off the top of my head because you're not calling me if you found an assumed a house you can assume, right? I don't have that conversation, but there are some websites that will go track listings that will say, hey, this listing has an assumed mortgage. So I'm sure Google or Grok or some AI can help you find those websites. But there are sites. I've had investors call me, hey, I just saw this house on this site and it says I can assume the mortgage. What are my steps? I'm like, don't call me. Call that
Now,
servicer.
when you're assuming that mortgage, I am assuming that if you have to get a second, like if I were to find a private investor that would lend me the second on it,
Yep.
they're going to qualify me based on the payments for the second as well, right?
I would make that assumption, but I don't do assumptions. So it's hard for me to know the exact guidelines. But when you do an assumed mortgage, you are getting underwritten. It is a full document process. Now, they may not do an appraisal because the house has already got a mortgage and they know that mortgage has been paid down. So a lot of times the assumptions are going to have uh, no appraisal associated with the assumption. But you're submitting full doc. You can't do a DSCR assumption, right? That's not going to be an option or a way to go assume
Right,
that mortgage.
right. Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, it's funny because you said, I believe it was last week, you even talked about how the jobs report coming out and how you didn't expect it to be real, and it wasn't.
No, it never is. Not the BLS. Well, the BLS last year, I want to say it was like 2.4 or 2.5 million jobs. And then they revised it. They're like, oh yeah, half of those were fake. Sorry. Sorry about that. We miscalculated. Oops.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I guess agencies can, I don't know how they can get away with that. It just inconsistently.
They're consistently inconsistent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's
the jobs report has so much weight on our mortgage rates. It moves the needle. It really does. It has I mean, our rates, we were sitting pretty. If that jobs report last Friday would have come out weak, we would be sitting here with rates maybe in the 6.5 or 6.75, like lower than where they're at. But
yeah.
no, that jobs report came out strong again. And next month, I will bet a Bitcoin, not really, but I would bet because it's $100,000. So I don't think I'm going to make that size of a bet. I will bet a very small fraction of a Bitcoin that that they revise these numbers down when they release the next month's BLS report.
Yeah, that's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So, you talked another thing about how it seems that mortgage applications are up. And we're talking about inventory that's available in different areas. I love that map that you always show. And it breaks my heart every time I look at Florida and see how the change that Florida has made. It's scary at this
It's
point.
a big one. It's a
But
big change.
even in Rock Hill, it's so price driven. I have a lot of friends, some of them are on this call, that are trying to sell houses that are 400 and under. They're sitting on the market. Some of them aren't even really getting any showings, you know, and taking a long time. I have someone in my office that's looking for a house between 5 and 600,000. Every house they look at is gone in
Mhm.
literally hours by the time they're looking at it.
I have a client that just went under contract, and this house was so hot. They did 100,000 due diligence to get
Oh
this house under contract. And they
oh
were,
my
I want to
goodness.
say they were 40 or $50,000 above on the list price. I had another client that did, it was like a $25,000 due diligence. This was in Greensboro. But the house was like, I think it was 7 or 800,000 was the list price. They did like 40,000 or 30,000 over with a 25,000 due diligence, and they lost. So if it's priced right and if it's a hot house, they're still moving. And I still have clients all the time. Well, I didn't get that house. And man, there was a guy on this call. I don't know if I see him because his picture's not on, but he was making an offer on a house, and we were trying like, hey, we gotta ninja this house because if it goes to a bidding war, it still gets big. Like we still have houses that just fly off the market very quickly, but then you've got a lot of houses that aren't. So Wendy, actually, I have a new program, and I haven't looked into it enough. And I don't have the capacity to actually help people with this program yet. So I'm working on increasing my loan officer count. And this program, you can advertise your house as a rent to own. And this company has a program. I don't know the details, so I'll learn about it this next week and then I'll share next week. But it's a rent to own program where the seller gets paid, the agent gets paid, the loan officer gets paid. So all three of us that are involved in the transaction get paid as a sale. So the buyer is going to have a company buy the house for them and then rent it from them. Now, there's been some other of these programs that have come and gone, and a lot of times their business model is we want to get this house back, right? We want to rent it at really high rates. So I need to look at this program deeply to see if it's a true market rent or how they're going to look at that. But it could be a way, especially in that $200,000 to $400,000 price range, where we might be able to advertise that house, put a little sign rider on there that says rent to owns unavailable, and let everybody still get paid out of that transaction. So I will learn about this program. It's relatively new and it's on
Wow.
my radar, but I'm not the master. So I will dig in and I'll share next week.
Very interesting. And we have a question here. Is the due diligence fee non-refundable like the EMD? So the earnest money deposit, it says the word deposit, that's refundable. That's refundable. But a due diligence fee is not refundable. If you back out, it's gone.
That client that's 100 grand in, they are pot committed. They're buying that house,
That's right.
right? And that's a North Carolina only thing for everybody on this call outside of North Carolina. We pay earnest money and due diligence. Due diligence is really a fee to the seller to take the house off the market. And
Well,
the
you,
only time you get that due diligence back is if there was a title issue and the seller can't actually sell. Then you
yeah.
can get but that's so rare. I think I've had like 1 or 2 transactions in the last decade that we've gotten due diligence back.
So there's South Carolina does it too, but they call it a termination fee.
Right.
So you're committing that if for some reason other than these things that we terminate, we're committing to giving you this much.
And I don't see that because that's for South Carolina, it's a checkbox, right? You check
Yeah.
the boxes, their
Well,
termination fee, and then
yeah,
you
you
put a
fill in
dollar
the
amount on it.
blank. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't see it nearly. I mean, in North Carolina, due diligence is every single contract. South Carolina, it's a fraction of the contracts that I see that check mark. So it's an option now in South Carolina, but I don't see it, maybe the number that you do in South Carolina, Wendy, but I don't see that checked as nearly as frequently. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard here in North Carolina.
As a buyer, I'm going to use it every opportunity I can. If I'm really serious about
Oh
it,
yeah,
I want to give you something to let you know I ain't kidding. Here,
right.
let me put this down for you and let you know that I am not kidding. I'm serious about buying it. So,
Strengthens your offer.
yeah. The other thing that I think is just so weird is recession resistant has always been a really coined term that I love, and we've lived by that with our company. And this is the first time I have seen recession resistant uh, not selling, not selling as quickly as the high end stuff. It's weird.
Yeah, it's a strange market. It's hit or miss. It's hit or miss.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. Great information. Good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. So the whole time you're sitting here talking, Bryan, about, loan assumptions and and this buy to rent, or I'm sorry, to rent to own kind of stuff. Just after leaving this note expo, now everything in my head turns to just notes. How much easier it is to just do notes. Always, eh, I'm always amazed. Like the back of my mind, I'm constantly thinking, well, what about all the deductions I get because I own the property instead of doing the seller financing? Um, the benefits certainly outweigh it. And Randy, I'm going to get you to unmute yourself, if you will. Uh, are you able to do that? You're still muted.
Okay.
There you go. How you doing?
Great, great, great. I'm happy to be here this morning.
Well, we are so happy to have you here. I know you've been listening to the conversation, and I mean, don't you think the same way? Like your mind shifts to something completely different when you're thinking about selling or thinking about renting properties. The if you sell it, seller financing or creating notes, it just changes the game, doesn't it? Oh, we can't hear you now.
Can you hear
There you try it again. No,
me?
you're on and off.
Hold on. Having a little technical difficulty here.
All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, but you're going in and out just a little bit.
Sorry about. What about now?
All right, try it now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. All right. All right. But yeah, there is a big challenge to do that. When I first started, thinking about converting, selling, it was hard for me to let go of title. It's just I was so used to renting and, didn't want to let go of title. But, once I got over that, doing the notes was a game changer.
So, so, so answer my question about, I don't have all those great write-offs that I can have when I own a property.
Well, again, going to the seminars, doing investing in myself that way, kind of creates a lot of the write-offs for me. Also, when you're with what I do is when you hypothecate the notes, the interest that I'm paying to the passive investors, that's kind of a write-off also.
Hmm. So tell us, there are some people here on the call that did not get to hear your story last week. Tell people about you, Randy, how you got started, and what really got you onto the note side.
Well, okay. How long do you say we have, Wendy?
People will hang tough until 9 o'clock for sure.
Okay. Well, what really got me started in the real estate business to begin with was my wife and I in 1987. We bought our first house that we lived in, and I noticed that after we bought the house and moved in, that this was the biggest purchase of our life, and I didn't have a clue about what I had just done. Um, you know and so I tried to figure out. I said, well, this is a thing, this is the biggest purchase of my life. This is the thing that I'm spending the most money on. Why? And I don't know anything about it, so let me learn about the thing that I'm spending the most money on. And that's kind of what got me started. And I'm gonna put this down and tell me if you can't hear me. Can you still hear me, Wendy?
Yes, it's a little less, but yes.
Yeah, maybe I may have to hold this. But yeah, kind of getting started, and I'm sorry. But kind of getting started and learning how to learning about the thing that I spend the most money on, which was housing. That's what really got me started into real estate. Then I was sitting there, I read something about residual income. I was like, oh, I like that. Something that I can do while I'm asleep, make while I'm sleeping. It's like, yeah, that works for me. And of course, I used to stay up every Sunday night watching those infomercials. I don't know, the younger guys may not remember, like the Dave Delgado show and all of that. I watched, those faithfully every Sunday night. And there was a guy on there from Brandon, Mississippi. Um, uh, or we'll call him Leo. But Leo was from Brandon. And I said, if he can do it, I know I can do it. And so he talked about buying VA foreclosed properties and no money down, all of that. And so that's what I started doing. I wrote to the VA. They sent me a little package, and there was a question on there that says, I don't know. I thought it said, "Are you broke?" And I said, "Yes." Check the box there. But what it really says, well, are you a broker? so, so the VA sent me all of the forms, all of the packets, even the lockbox keys. So I had access to all of the VA properties. I had the lockbox keys. I had the list. I had all of the forms. And so I started buying the VA properties. The great thing about that, again, it was no money down. You only had to pay about $900 in closing costs. And I told my wife, listen, don't pay the light bill. Only pay half on this bill and pay half on that bill, and we'll have the $900. And so that's how we bought our first property. But
Wow.
I was thinking, it's like, how could I make this better? I mean, the $900 per house, that wasn't bad at all. We bought maybe 2 or 3 of those like that. But I said, how could I make this better? And what I did, at the time, you could take 5 courses and sit for your broker's license. And that's what I did. I got my broker's license in real estate. And now every time I bought a house, I got the keys to the house and a check for $900. Well, let's say if I'm buying a $30,000 house, there's a 6% commission. That's $1,800. So I paid $900 to the VA, and they'd give me the keys and a check for $900.
Wow.
So now I'm getting paid every time I buy a house. So I mean, think about that. How many houses could you buy if you got a check and the keys? So of course I bought a bunch of VA properties then. And then as time went on, I started buying properties for cash. And with other owner financing. Walter had a couple of deals and stuff. And so finally Walter, I bought, I think it was 5 houses at one time from Walter. And after that I quit my job. I says, hey, I'm out of here.
And you were renting those houses at
I was renting. Yeah, I was renting
Okay.
houses, and I built up a portfolio of about 42 houses during that time.
Wow.
Yeah. But again, that kind of got to be hectic. I didn't have systems in place. It just literally about, drove me crazy with that. And so I ended up losing a bunch of those properties, filing bankruptcy and having to go back to work again,
Mm.
which was devastating for me.
So tell me what the mistakes were. Why do you think you got to that point? What decisions did you make that you would do different?
I over leveraged the properties. At that time, you could buy the house, go in, fix it up, get it appraised, and then refinance and get your money back, kind of like that. And
The
again,
Burr method at its
yeah, the Burr
best,
method.
right?
Right. And so I was over leveraging the properties, taking out way more money than I should have.
Okay, so and what is that? So you were taking out more than 70% of the after repaired value. What were you taking out?
Well, I was kind of getting higher appraisers, higher appraisals, and so the higher appraisals gave me more money. So again, at first when I first started doing that, I was only taking out, what I had in the property just to get my money back, keep the payments low, still where the property still cash flow. It got to the point to where I just kept getting the money out. The properties were probably making like, cash flowing less than $100 a month. And then, when it's like that, you don't like those houses anymore.
Right.
When they stop cash flowing like that. So that was my problem. That was my issue. That was the mistake that I made. was over leveraging. And this was about 2007, 2008. So it wasn't the market that sort of tanked me. It was me. I did that by over leveraging those properties and not having a good system in place.
What a great lesson.
Yeah. Having to go back to work again. After working for about 2 or 3 years, my daughter came up to me and she says, "Daddy, you know what? We haven't been on a cruise. We hadn't been to, Disney World. You haven't even taken us to Six Flags or anywhere." I says, "Well, baby, I'm working on a job now. Really can't afford that now." And she's like, "Well, you need to go get back into real estate again." And I was like, "You know what? You are absolutely right. That's exactly what I need to do. It's what I know. It's what I love." And so that's what I started doing. And I started wholesaling properties to build cash. And then I quit my job again for the second time. See, so most of you are fighting about quitting your job one time. I've done it twice. So I've quit my job twice.
That's awesome.
And so I started wholesaling properties to build cash. And then I realized, hey, I could sell the prop instead of selling them for cash. I could sell them with owner financing um, and get that same income that I would as if I was renting the property without having to do any of the work.
Hmm.
So notes have really been a game changer for me. When you really think about the deal, most investors probably get about 300, 350 a month per door if there's a mortgage on the property. About 350 a door if there's a mortgage on the property. Well, they're probably paying me about 350 a month. See, so get 350 a month and do all the work, or 350 a month and do nothing. I'll take the 350 and do nothing.
And really, it doesn't even have to be equal, the 350 both ways, because really
No,
you have no real expenses when you don't own it.
that's right. That's right. So they have their 350, but they still have expenses and things that they have to pay. My 350 is zero expenses. So it's really been a game changer. And so again, creating my own notes, and so that's what I do. I sell the properties with owner financing. Um, my market is to other investors, other landlords. I know most people model theirs. They do owner financing with homeowners. I personally do not like the homeowner market for a couple of reasons.
Well, talk about that. Talk about why you would rather sell to an investor. I know, but people need to hear the reasons. I know why I don't like working with homeowners, but
Well, that's just kind of too fickle. And well, for one thing, is that most of the properties that I'm selling to investors are almost as is. I'll go in and I'll cut the grass and clean out any junk in the property, but I don't fix anything. And so, of course, it's very difficult to sell to a homeowner when they can't just move into the property. Um, Investors, they're going to do all of the work. They're going to paint it. They're going to put flooring in. They're going to, do the air conditioner systems, all of that. I don't have to do any of that. So probably if I was selling to a homeowner, I would probably have to do some repairs to the property so that they would be able to at least be able to move in. But with an investor, I don't have to do any of that. So it's a much simpler, much faster process.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Also another thing too is that investors tend to pay a little bit better sometimes than some homeowners. Because they're making the money from the rental of the property, and so so they're getting their money and they're making sure that they pay me to keep their income coming in. My opinion of a homeowner is that a lot of times, if they're having difficulties or things like that, or let's say if they default on the property, they're going to kind of fight you tooth and nail because they don't have anywhere else to go. if a investor defaults, I mean, he has his own property. He'll let it go a lot easier than it will from a homeowner.
Yeah.
So I prefer the investor market more than anything else.
So much less paperwork is involved in it as well, because when you're financing to an owner occ, you've got to have it underwritten by an RMLO.
Right.
And a note's harder to sell. If you want to turn around and sell that note, it's harder to sell without having that in place.
Right. So what it is again, when you're dealing with investors, it's a lower price, but it's a higher interest rate, and I like that better.
Right.
Of course, with the homeowner, you're going to have a higher price, but probably a lower interest rate because you don't want to run into Dodd-Frank or usury laws or anything like that. The loans I do are business to business commercial loans. So in Mississippi, we don't have to worry about usury or Dodd-Frank or anything like that for business to business loans, for commercial loans.
Right. So we have a statement in here from Reg, and he says that, and I see his point, and really I'd like for you to talk too about this, Reg. Is it says remember that they are paying down the loan. You're getting some principal back in most cases. The note will pay off, and no more income stream. You won't get any more income stream after that.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll never have a free and clear house situation as you would if you were paying off a rental and then keeping the rents. So yeah, I get that. You're getting rid of the equity is really what you're doing.
Right. It's paying down, and so again, I'll just do another property, create another loan.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really about, go ahead, Reg. Go ahead and unmute. I can't hear you though. It shows that you're unmuted, but I can't hear you talk.
Okay.
There you go. Did he leave?
Okay. Is he still there?
He's here, but he's disappeared.
Okay.
He'll figure it out. He's pretty good with this stuff. I mean, it's people say, well, when does the work stop? And the key is how far advanced do you want to work? If you're doing 10-year notes and 20-year notes and you're 60 years old, how far in advance and how much longer do you need notes? How do you need notes coming in when you're 80?
Right.
I think you have enough cash by then.
Right. And so now notes that I'm doing now, I'm just pushing money farther down the road. That's what it does for me. It just pushes money farther and farther down the road. Uh, I don't know if I got a chance to share with you, Wendy. I did sort of an Excel spreadsheet. It was sort of my template, my model that I'm using.
You actually did tell me a little bit about that. Can you share it with us?
Um,
I didn't know if you were in a situation where you can, because it looked like you're on a phone.
yeah, I'm on a phone and I'm probably having a little technical difficulties with my computer, but I mean, but all it does is just shows, say that if I could buy a house or basically create a note every month for 48 months and then stop after the 48 months. In other words, don't create not another note, just stop at that point. That would give me, over the time would give me about $1.2 million in net income from creating those 48 notes. Now, again, we're talking here in Mississippi, smaller numbers, smaller price points, things like that. But again, it works. If you create notes, even in your area, whatever area you're in, you create enough notes, it will provide tremendous income for you for a long time. You work once and reap the benefits year after year after year after year.
I have probably a stupid question.
Okay.
I wonder if you can 1031 exchange a note. probably because it's not a real property.
That may be true. That may be true. I'm not sure about that.
Let's see if Pauline was on here, because I know she could answer that question, but if
Yeah.
anybody can, that'd be great. Lou, did you want to say something?
Yes, I wanted to share some experience and then ask a question. First, good morning from
Good morning.
Houston to everyone. I had two properties that were in a flood zone and they flooded at the same time. I nearly had a mental breakdown because I had to deal with them. And I decided to create notes, one, to learn how to create notes and get that education under my belt. And they're still paying. All I do is check the bank statement that I get from the servicing company that I put in place. So I'm super happy with that. Now, I do have other rentals in that area. So when I drive by, I see that the value has increased tremendously for that land. So in that sense, there's kind of that pro and con. And my question to Randy is, what are some of the biggest challenges that you have with your business and for someone like myself that might want to create more notes? Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, one of the things is, like I said, it's, my business is basically 90+% with investors. And so being said that usually I don't escrow taxes and insurance. So probably one of the challenges is just monitoring those taxes, making sure that they have, that I have all their insurance docs come in on time. I would think that's probably one of the biggest challenges there. It's just monitoring for taxes and insurance because I don't escrow that.
Is there a reason why you don't have the servicing account escrow that?
I self-service most of my accounts, and again, I think most investors are big boys. They know what they're doing. Um, so no, so I just don't escrow for that reason.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
And we did get an answer in the chat box. Thank you for doing that. That you cannot exchange a 1031, do a
Oh,
1031 exchange. So
well,
I'm thinking like kind exchange. You can find another note, but
well, Wendy, when I talked to you yesterday, I was telling you that I got a deal just the other day, just as soon as I got back from the trip, that and another investor um, gave me a referral on a property, and I went over it and talked with the owner about that property. Now, here's the thing that I try to do, Wendy, and I think I may have explained that to you, is that I'm always looking to help people. I don't really want to buy a house. I'm looking for people that I can help, and usually that's gonna, turn into me getting title to the property and possibly maybe giving them some money sometimes. Um, so again, this guy, his mom had a personal care home that she had for several years. She got ill, and I think is now in a nursing home now, and that property was really bothering him, worrying him, because he was having to cut the grass, had the utilities on, paying the taxes, paying insurance, things like that, and that property really was bothering him. And so I was able to talk with him, and we worked out a deal where, again, I could relieve him of all of that. The property is a 7-bedroom, 4-bath house, um, and I'm buying that property for $20,000 from him. We should
7 bedroom,
um
7 bedroom.
7 bedrooms, 4 baths.
Wow.
So it's a huge house that they were using as a personal care facility. Um, and again, my plans are to sell that property to an investor with owner financing. So I'll sell the my plan is to sell the property for $38,000, $3,000 down, and 460.88 a month down for 20 years.
Oh, stop.
460.88
I'm
a month.
sorry.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yeah, 460.88 a month for 20 years. So that's at a 15% interest rate.
Wow.
So 38,000, $3,000 down, financing the 35 at 15% for 20 years. That should give you a payment of 460.88 for 20 years. So again, I'm helping the seller relieve his burden. I'm helping the investor to get into the property at a low payment, low interest. Well, I'm sorry, a low initial fee. So he's only paying $3,000 down to get into the property. Now the property does need some work, and they will be assuming some back property taxes. So again, that's why I'm only asking for the $3,000 down.
Wow.
But they're able to get in low at a fairly low price. Now, let me say this. I know I don't know if Tom is on the meeting here this morning, but I have been talking with Tom.
Yep, he is.
Yeah. So before you guys, pack your bags and head to Jackson, Mississippi, because the prices are so low, and prices are low and rents are high. But do let me say this is that, most of the deals that I talk about are deals that I've made. If you come and you're looking on the multiple listing, you're not going to find houses for $15,000 and $20,000 on the multiple listing. All of the deals that I'm doing are deals that I made by helping the sellers with their problems. So if Wendy, I'm sure you've been to a lot of Pete Fortunato's seminars, and the one thing Pete always asks sellers is, why would you want to sell a nice house like this? And so that gets them to talking and telling, finding out what the problem is. So what I always want to do is I want to know what's the problem and not what's the price.
Right.
I very rarely ever, almost never ask sellers how much they want. The why is more important than the how much.
Right.
I stay focused on the why, and then once you can figure out the why, that's what's going to help you to get a low price on the property. I mean,
Right.
think of it this way: have you guys ever given away something for free? A couch, a refrigerator, a car, maybe.
Sure.
It's probably things you could have sold. You could have made money on it, but it wasn't about the money, was it? The problem is that it was in your way. It was causing some kind of problem. You needed it gone. You needed it moved right away. And if, let's say, Wendy, if you had a car, your car was giving you trouble, and you bought another car. Well, the old car is blocking your garage, and you having to move it in and out of the way. It's just in your way. If I said, hey, I've got a tow truck, I could be over in 10 minutes. If I come and move that thing out of the way, you'd probably give me a hug and thank me, for getting that out of your way. Now, what did I say about money?
Nothing.
Nothing. You see? And so you were happy to get that out of the way with no money. And so that's what I try to do. Some wholesalers, they'll come in, take that same situation, they'll come in and they'll ask a dumb question or say something stupid like, well, how much do you want for that? And you probably name some price. You said, oh, give me $100 or something like that. But he could have got it for free if he had just kept his mouth shut.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Reggie, are you ready? I saw you come back on.
Okay.
Yeah, I could just make a quick comment.
Okay.
Hang on here. Okay. So notes, seller financing, great strategy. And Eddie Speed did a really good job at Deal Makers talking about it. But something to keep in mind that, as Pete Fortunato points out, notes are a depleting asset unless it's interest only. So if your dream is to have 10 free and clear houses be out of the rat race, those houses are going to keep producing rent once you pay them down.
That's true.
And you can give them to your kids or put them in your estate or whatever. You're going to have notes. They're going to deplete out. Now, if you're disciplined, you know you're getting extra principal. And so if you're going to put that away or reinvest it, then you're good because you'll still have an asset and buy another asset with the money. There's no doubt the note's going to produce more income, be it 40%, 50%, 100%, whatever.
Right.
However, you're either going to keep finding more notes and sell on seller financing, or you're going to deplete the asset out. And so at that point, you're going to be 10 notes paid off with nothing left, unless you were a really good steward and did something with it. So they're great. I use them. Just keep in mind, there's trade-offs. You lose the joys of management of the rental home, and you get some tax advantage for an installment sale. All good stuff. However, the downside is that you could be 20 years later with nothing left. So just keep that in mind. There's no cure-all in this business.
Yeah.
There's trade-offs.
Right.
That's a very good point. You know, that's a very good point. You should never have all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
You should have a niche that you're great at, but you should never have all your eggs in one basket. And the key thing that you said, Reg, is reinvest the money. That's the key.
Here's another good point too, Wendy, is that and especially depending on how many properties or how many notes you have, every now and then one's going to recycle around where maybe property back. I recently did my first foreclosure. And this was a homeowner loan and I told you I don't like homeowner loans, but this was a homeowner loan. It's kind of a long story, so I'm not going to really go into that. But I, took the property back, but I've actually sold the same house 3 times.
Wow.
So a lot of times you can recycle. There'll be times where properties will recycle around again, and then it starts all over again. A lot of times you're going to have payoffs or things like that will kind of hurt your cash flow a little bit, on a monthly basis, but that's part of it too.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about why people sell off portions of a note, whether it's the first partial or they would share a note. Why do people do that?
Well, for me, I guess in some ways I'm still more of a kind of a control freak that I don't really sell partials because I don't I want to deal with the borrowers myself, but I do hypothecate a lot of mine, and so basically what that is just borrowing money from a passive investor and using the note as the collateral for the loan. And so what I'll do that. That kind of keeps me still in control of everything. And, that passive investor only has to deal with me basically. So they're not dealing with a borrower that they don't really know or trying to collect from somebody that they really don't know. They're dealing directly with me. I'm sending them a check, each and every month. So they only have to deal with me. That hypothecation for me helps me recapitalize. So a lot of times I can recapitalize my funds and I can use those funds to to do another deal with, to create another note. So I can create note after note, deal after deal, using the same money over and over and over again. So a lot of people say, hey, well, it takes a lot of money to, do notes. I just keep using the same money over and over and over again.
That's the way to do it. It's to use that kind of leverage. I love that idea, to be able to use that kind of leverage. I think that's awesome. I really would love for you to take a minute or two and tell people about the tax stuff that you're lending on as well, because I think what's important for people to know, because they say they want to buy notes. Well, how do you do it? How do you find somebody else that's going to lend you money to lend on notes? That's tough enough. But
Right.
you have low dollar self-directed money that you can use too. But before I get you to answer this,
Okay.
Wendell Long is gonna take over. He said he's got until 9:15. I have an appointment that I have to go to that I have at 9:15, so I have to leave right now. Thank you for everything you're doing. I just want to say thank you
Thank-
very much. But
Yeah.
Wendell, I've made you the host, so you're good to go.
Okay.
And Randy, go
Thanks,
ahead and
Wendy.
talk about that.
Okay. All right. Well,
Thank you, Wendell.
hey, Wendell, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. All
Here.
right. Well, just what that is, and what Wendy was talking about is that, again, I'll look for different ways that I can, different lending opportunities that I can use to create notes with. And one of the ways, one of the things that I do is, again, I talk with other investors. Being a landlord myself, I knew the problems that I was having when I was a landlord, and so I talked to other investors to see, are they having some of those same problems. And one problem that I had that was got me, all the time, was when it came time to pay property taxes. Um, when it came time to pay the property taxes, I said, "Oh, I'm going to do this one more deal, and then I'll pay them." And then, then another deal will come up, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to do, one more deal, and then I'm going to pay them." And then before you know it, you're at the end of that 3-year period, and that one more deal you were waiting to do, something happened, and now it's just got you all messed up and things like that. So I look for other investors who were having similar problems. I found one investor. He had more properties, but we did 13 properties with him. I paid the property taxes for him for 13 properties. Now, what I did is I charged a $179 upfront administrative fee, which means he paid me about $3,000. And then I paid the property taxes for him, which was totaled about $30,000. Now, again, my goal and my mission is to make sure, I want to put my foot in the ground to say that no other investor would ever, ever, ever lose another property to the county. I mean, I think they should lose them to me, but not the county, of course. And so that was kind of my goal, is to make sure that that he was able to pay his property taxes, and then his payments to me sort of acted like an escrow. So he was paying me every month, which he should have been putting into an account, and paying it that way. But he paid me every month, just like he would putting the money into his escrow. And so again, those things can go on and on and on. I only charged what the county charged. The county charged 18%. I only charged him 18%. But if you look at that 18% plus the 179 per property that I charged, that actually calculated out to about a 30% yield over a 1-year period. So that's kind of what I was after. But again, all I'm doing is looking for different ways that I can lend money and create lending opportunities. That's the whole game. And I think if you'll get out there and talk to other investors, or talk to other people, you can find ways too that you can help them and create a lending opportunity for yourself. Okay. Were there any other questions?
Wendell, I have one. This is Sandra.
Go ahead.
And I guess it's Randy, do you teach others how to do this?
Well, I do mentor with other young up and coming wholesalers. So I have a little program that we go through, and what they're doing is basically learning the business. They're going out, finding the properties. I'm teaching them how, how to find the properties, how to write the contracts, the whole 9 yards. And so if they find a property, generally they're going to make between $2,000 and $3,000 per property. I'm going to fund the deal. We're going to sell that property to an investor with owner financing, and again, they'll make anywhere between $2,000 and $3,000 per deal. Now, we'll get to some point to where they're going to grow up and they don't need me anymore, and that's fine. I have no problem with that.
Right.
But that helps bring me cash flow. I'm sorry, deal flow, so that I don't have to get out of my pajamas.
And hypothecation, how does one get involved with that with you?
Well, again, you can reach out to me. I could send you a note tape of the ones that I want to hypothecate now. Again, I pay 9.25%. Well, I'm sorry, it's actually not 9.25%. It's 9.2418%. For the technical people there. So, but yeah, I could, I'll be happy to share my information with you.
Okay.
And you
I
can.
think Randy, I think your number is in the chat and your email address. Is that correct? 601-291-9331.
Yes. 60.
Good Neighbor Investments LLC at Gmail.
That's right. That's contact information. So if anybody's interested in that, if you have, lazy money that you have sitting around earning, 1 or 2% in the bank, I can help you with that.
Awesome.
All right. Any other questions?
Thank you, Randy, for that.
Okay. Thank you, Sandra. Any other questions? Well, I would like to say again that, again, before you pack your bags to come to Jackson, Mississippi, looking for, cheap properties, again, these are all deals that I've learned. You make the deals. I'm making these deals happen. It's not like, somebody standing out on the corner saying, oh, I'll take, $750 for my house. You have to really make those deals happen. And I have bought properties for $750. Most people will say, how did you find that? I didn't find it. I had to make that deal happen. And so what you'll find for you real estate people out there, you'll find that those deals and those opportunities are right there in your own backyard. You just got to reach out to the right people, find people that you can help, find people who have situations that you can help them with. I've had people actually give me a house, for free, totally for free, and hug my neck at the closing. And again, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. It's about, can you solve their problem? Can you help them with their problem? And sometimes, like I told you before, if you're giving away stuff for free that you could have sold, that tells you right there that it wasn't about the money. It was about solving the problem. So whether it's a couch, a refrigerator, a stove, a car, or a house, it's all the same. It's all the same. People have problems. They have a house. Most investors think that it's all about the money, and they go in and offer money right off the bat, and not ever take the time out to find out what's really going on with the person and find out what the real problem is. And if you can drill down and find out what the problem is, you're going to make a much, much better deal. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Hey, Randy, this is Tom Latimer. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, great, man.
Thank you so much for the your conversation and coming on. After talking with you last week, I'm glad that you and Wendy got together where you could be a speaker and be on the clock for us this morning and sharing all that valuable and great information.
Yeah. I'm sorry I've been having technical difficulties this morning, but yeah, Tom, and I enjoyed talking with you. And again, if I can help any of you out there, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm, willing to share information I can with you, and help you on your journey to success.
Tom, you want to close us out in prayer, and then people want to stay on any after that. I'll be riding for another 15 minutes.
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to do that, Wendell. And thank you for being the co-host here. Gracious eternal Father, we thank you for the day. We thank you for all those viewers and participants on this call this morning. We thank you for recognizing, for us, giving us an opportunity to recognize our moms and Mother's Day, and the work and the dedication and everything else that they have done in our lives to make us who we are today. And Father, for those who moms are alive, we just pray that we can celebrate and just recognize them and the duties and grace and everything else that they have participated in us. And for us, Father, who mothers are no longer with us, Father, we can still honor and tell the stories of how well and great and the things that they have done to make us the person that we are today. So we just praise you, Father, and we lift you up in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Well, I'll stay on as long as anybody wants. Also, I wanted to, I invited, several people on the meeting this morning. I hope you'll continue to attend the meeting. It looks like to be a great group here. And so I'd like to thank everybody that I invited who came on this morning.
Yeah, it's always a good thing. So we appreciate it too.
Yeah.
So we can open it up if there's other questions, either for the group or for anybody here. Feel free to ask them.
Yeah.
This is kind of the networking after the meeting that
Yeah.
we do here. So.
Yeah, and I'll stay on as long as you like.
This is Luis again. I do have a question. Can you walk us through a typical timeline of how long it takes and the steps from start to finish? Let's say you get a referral or you do some marketing.
Mm-hmm. You mean from buying the house? So let's see, today's Friday. So I got the referral Wednesday. I immediately called the owner, saw the house. Yeah, if my days, yeah. Saw the house Thursday. We signed a contract Thursday. I sent it to the attorney Thursday. Hopefully he will have title work done by the day, and we should close by Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. Then I will pitch the property out once I close on the property, I'll pitch the property out to the investors that I have in mind. Usually I target 2 or 3 people who I know like this type of property, want this type of property. I'm going to, target them, reach out to them, and then we probably should close by the end of the next week. So probably 2 weeks, I'll say, start to finish.
And do you do your own contracts? You have an attorney that you work with? Are they always new, or is it a template?
No, well, mostly kind of it's a template, but I create a new contract for every deal that I do. For those of you who have, been out job searching, you don't use the same resume for every job that you apply for. You want to create a new resume for every job that you do. And so that's kind of how I do with my contracts. I basically create, it's the same format, but I basically create a new contract for every deal that I do. I'm
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say very informative. Thank you. And one last question. Have you ever had to foreclose, and can you speak to that?
Okay, so I just got my stripes here recently on bankruptcy and foreclosure. Okay, so I went through and both were all with the same person. So it's it's a good process. It's good, it's good for me to know everything But it's pretty quick. So in Mississippi is a non-judicial state, so it takes about I'm gonna say 6 weeks from start to finish, to go through the foreclosure. So it's
Oh, was there anything that you learned from that that you could share, like the person pays the fees, or it costs roughly $6,000, or something that you didn't know that now you know? I haven't been through that process, so I'm super curious. And again, very informative. Thank you.
well, I'd say get with the attorney that you have on your team. So basically, I think but that was part of your question the last time about do I use attorneys and stuff. I have a couple of attorneys who are kind of on my team. I'll say that that I have their private cell phone numbers that I can pretty much reach out to them sort of anytime. So if I've got their private cell phone numbers, and they don't mind me reaching out to them at 10 o'clock at night or whatever it is, they're kind of on my team, I guess you would say. And so get with the attorney that's on your team, and let them go over through the process with you, so that you speed up the time. One thing that helped a little bit is that if you have in your original deed of trust, and again, I create my own deeds of trust and promissory notes with these deals. That way, I have consistency of documentation throughout the loans. If you're using different attorneys, you're going to have different promissory notes and different deeds of trust. So I provide the attorneys with my promissory notes and my deeds of trust. But if you will name the attorney who's on your team, if you will name them as the trustee on your deed of trust, that will help definitely speed up the process. Because if you name another attorney as the trustee on your deed of trust and you're having to foreclose, then they're going to have to file a substitution of trustee, which could put you out another week or a week and a half, maybe something like that, because that's just an additional documentation that you have to file. But most attorneys have no problem with you naming them as the trustee on your deeds of trust. So that way, if you have to foreclose, they're already named as the trustee, and it could be a really quick process that way. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Did I answer your question?
Beyond expectations. Thank you. Have a good one in Mississippi.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Any other questions or any other comments?
Hey, Randy, it's Tyler.
Hey, Tyler. Hey, how's it going, man?
Man, it's going well, going well. Looking forward to our lunch here in Mississippi here in the near future. But I was wanting to know, because as you know, I'm on the hard money lending side in that area as well. But if I pass on any of these properties, or maybe somebody's looking more for a solution with you, is there like a referral, or let's say if I'm a wholesaler and I'm passing anything to you, do you pay any type of referral fee, or how are you working with other investors just to keep your lead flow at an all-time high?
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. I mean, I definitely pay a referral. Just gonna depend on the deal and how things work. But yeah, I'm happy to talk to you or anybody about any deals or anything that we can work out. Again, I want to help as much as I can.
Awesome, great, thank you.
Okay, Tyler, I would say this is that. As far as lending goes, though, most of lending is with properties that I sort of own or control. I've had investors say, "Oh, I found this house. Will you loan me the money?" Very rarely do I kind of do that, and the reason is, one of the main reasons is that when it's my deal, I can hide some of the numbers. If somebody's bringing me a deal, kind of like that, they found a house and they want me to provide them with some funding. My numbers, they're not going to like my numbers. I'm more, yield driven kind of. for those of you out there, I know a lot of times when you go to hard money lenders, they will usually charge, I don't know, what, 3 points, 5 points, something like that for, for some hard money lending deals. Usually I charge between 33 and 50 points. Yes, you heard that right. Between 33 and 50 points. So they usually don't like those numbers. And kind of how that works for me, let me just kind of give you an example. So if I gave you $20,000, you're going to sign a $30,000 note in deed of trust. See, so that's 50 points.
All right. Well, Randy, I'm going to reference you anytime somebody comes back to me and says my rates are too high.
Yeah. Have them talk to me out. That.
No, thank you. Great info as well.
All right. Great. All right. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Is anybody out there that's is there something that's stopping you from getting more into the note business? Or is there something out there that's kind of stopping you, holding you back a little bit? No.
Hi, Randy.
Hi.
Hi, this is Tamara.
Hi, Tamara.
Hi. Yeah, actually there is, and one of them was already kind of brought up, that your notes pay off, and then you have to go out and find new notes. And I don't really, well, and maybe it's because I need to just learn how to do it, but I also don't know where or under whom to learn how to do it. I'm not good at marketing. I wouldn't be good at wholesaling. I'm not that person. I'm not the one to go out, and that's not me. I would need to be fed, and I can do analysis all day long, but I'm not one to go out and find it. So that's the main thing holding me back from doing notes. I could do one, but when that was gone, then I'm sitting there with a bunch of cash with nothing.
Isn't that awful?
Well, it is when it's not returning anything.
Well, Tamara, one thing that has really helped me is learning the paperwork. First of all, um, um, I'm one of these people. What I do is I spend a lot of time at the county recorder's office, looking at documents and things like that. And so again, I'll find deeds of trust from different banks, and for me, what I have to do is I have to actually come home and retype them. So if I retype them, I'm really reading every word. It helps me really understand, everything. If I see something in there, that I'm not sure what that means, then I can, reach out to other people or reach out to attorneys who are on my team or something like that to kind of get clarification of what that particular sentence means. But sitting there retyping those deeds of trust makes me really read and understand. If I'm just looking at it and I'm just reading it, there may be some things that I glance over. But when I have to retype it, and this is just for me, when I have to retype it, it really makes a big difference for me. So learning the documentation was I think key for me. And once I got that, then it helped me move a lot faster. It helped me move with speed a lot faster because I understood. The second thing is learning to use a financial calculator, I would say. But I have to admit, I say financial calculator, but I still don't really use. I have one, but I still don't really use it. I use just basically a regular amortization calculator. I use it's called Brett Whizzle. It's brettwhizzle.net. BRETTWHIS. I think it's SSEL.net. brettwhizzle.net. And it's just a regular amortization calculator. I have it on my phone. but I can calculate, payments. I can calculate yields. I can, calculate everything that I need using that one simple calculator, and it has really been a game changer for me. It's just learning how to calculate what the payment is. If I said I'm going to sell it for, you know, finance 35,000 at 15% for 20 years. Well, how much is that payment? And so learning how to calculate what that payment is, um, that's really been a big help for me.
Okay.
Okay. Also again, you could start off again, with like hypothecations or partials or something like that. Those probably smaller amounts, smaller deals, but it's just getting you into the game and getting you to know, understand all the paperwork that's involved. And so once you understand the paperwork, then it's just much easier. You feel a lot more comfortable when you understand the paperwork that's involved and the flow of how things go. That I think it's that not initially not knowing and not understanding that kind of stops you. But once you cross that threshold and once you do your first one, uh, then it's a game changer from there.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions? Do you have any other questions, Tamara?
Oh, I always have questions.
Well, your questions are probably going to help is hopefully help somebody else.
Well, so, well, one of the questions is, do you have any suggestions of, because it didn't sound like you did specific training, but any questions of, I mean, any suggestions of people or places to get true hands-on training? Because, being in the real estate industry, we all have come across plenty of people talking, right? And then you do the training or whatever, and it really doesn't pan out anything close to what they were touting, because it was really just a lot of marketing. Of people who will help to guide, and even more so, almost handhold, but guide for sure, and offers training that does that, but isn't hyping it up and making it sound like it's, more than it is.
Right, right. Well, I know there's probably several courses out there. I've never taken any of them, so it's hard for me to, you know, judge which one. I guess I'm one of these people where I did a lot of this first, and then I started going to, conferences and things like that afterwards. And I think that was a big advantage to me, because if I had went to a lot of the conferences first, I wouldn't be charging the rates that I'm charging and doing a lot of the things that I'm doing. Now the conferences have helped me, fine tune some things that I'm doing, but I think that was really a big help, is just kind of jumping in and doing it myself first. I know that's dangerous. I'm a adventurous kind of guy. I do crazy stuff like that sometimes. But that's helped me. But as far as any courses or training programs, me personally, I really don't know. I've heard of several, but I can't tell you whether they're, you know, exactly what you're looking for or not. Again, maybe if you'll put that in the chat, maybe some other people will respond to that of courses that they've taken, and that they found has been helpful for them. But I'm like you, Tamara. Some of it's just a lot of hype.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah, I like YouTube University. So I
that's what
spend a lot of time on YouTube. Searching stuff, listening to videos, watching stuff. Just to kind of gain knowledge a lot of times. So maybe that help.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, your experience is very helpful, so I
Okay.
appreciate it.
And of course, you can reach out to me anytime if I can help you. You get my number, email address, so don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay. Thank you. I'll
Okay.
look for it in the chat. I think it's in here somewhere.
Yes, okay. All right. And anybody else? I don't know. For those who are still on, maybe somebody tell me a little bit about what you're doing. If you're in the note business or you're in, more in the real estate space, guys, tell me what you're doing. Anybody care to jump in?
I think usually on this call and I know Wendell's up here, but we're usually wrapping up earlier, so most people are probably just listening.
Yeah, probably got it. Okay. Well, if we don't have any other questions or any other comments, I guess we'll kind of wrap this up also. I've really enjoyed being here with guys. I do plan to attend more, and look forward to speaking with you guys again. Okay. Well,
Thanks, Andy.
okay. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, sir. Great call.
Thanks,
All right.
Andy.
I'm out. All right. Okay. All right, guys. We'll see you later.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.